Hi, this is Mrs. Moret with homework help for tonight's lesson. Unit 2, Lesson 13. This is in your textbook on page 248, and you're doing problems 1 through 4 and 6 through 7. So the first question, identify a solution to the system of equations. Remember that a solution is an ordered pair of value for x and for y that make both equations true. So we'll go ahead and check for A, negative 4x, so negative 4 times negative 5, plus 3y, so plus 3 times 2. Well, that is equal to 26. So I already know that A, since it's supposed to be equal to 23, I already know that A is not going to be a solution. So we'll check for B. Negative 4 times negative 2, and then plus 3 times the y value for B, which is 5. That is equal to 23. So far, it makes the first equation true. So let's check the second one. X minus y equals negative 7. If x is negative 2 and y is 5, negative 2 minus 5, that does equal negative 7. So since it made both equations true, then B is a solution to this system of equations. We also know that if a system has a solution, it only has one. And so that tells me that B is the only correct answer. So C and D would also be incorrect. On number 2, number 2 says Lynn is solving the system of equations. She starts by rearranging the second equation to isolate the y variable, and she gets y equals 4 minus 1.5x. Then she substituted the expression 4 minus 1.5x in for the first equation as shown. Number 1, check to see if Lynn's solution makes both equations in the system true. So we'll check that first, and then we'll address part B. So if this is the correct solution, then it will make both of these equations up here true. So we'll just check 6 times negative 36 minus 5 times 58. And does that equal 34? Well, it actually equals negative 506. So that tells me that Lynn's solution is not correct. So for part B, if your answer to the previous question is no, which it was, find and explain her mistake. So let's take a look at her work. All right, so she starts with, actually I'm going to erase all of that to get it out of our way. Okay. So she starts with those two equations there, and it says she rearranges the second equation. So she basically took the 3x minus 2y equals 8, and she started by subtracting the 3x from both sides. So then she has 2y equals 8 minus 3x, and then she divided by 2 on both sides. And so y equals 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 3x divided by 2 is 1.5x. So y equals 4 minus 1.5x. So that was correct. Then she took this and substituted in for y in the first equation. Okay, so I can see that there. And I actually see her mistake in the second step. So when she substitutes 4 minus 1.5x in, she has 6x minus 5 times 4 minus 1.5x equals 34. And right here in the next step, she multiplied the -5 by the 4, and then she multiplied it by the 1.5x, but she forgot that the 1.5x was a negative 1.5x. So this step right here should say 6x minus 20, but then plus 7.5x equals 34. So that's where her mistake is. It's in this line right here. That should have been a plus sign. Okay, moving on to number 3, where we're going to solve each system of equations. So let's remember when you solve a system of equations that you have an answer for x and an answer for y. So we'll start with the first one. And this already has given me the actual value for x. So I know that 4 is the first value in my solution. And I'm going to substitute that 4 in for x right there and then solve for the y. So I get 2 times 4 minus 4y equals 20. 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, so this is just a two-step equation. I put my line there to remember to keep things balanced on both sides. Subtract the 8 from both sides, and we get negative 4y equals 12. And then dividing by the negative 4, we get y equals negative 3. So x is 4 and y is negative 3. And then on part B, I can see that my first equation is solved for y, and the second equation has y in it. So I'm going to take this expression for y here and replace all of it in the second equation. So I have to solve 2x minus 3 times 6x plus 11 equals 7. So I just replaced the y, but kept the rest of the second equation the same. Now there's just a bunch of cleaning up to do to solve. So 2x minus 3 times 6x is minus 18x. And then negative 3 times 11 is minus 33 equals 7. 2x minus 18x is negative 16x minus 33 equals 7. And then now I can actually, put my line down here so that I keep the equations balanced. I'm going to add the 33 over. Negative 16x equals 40. And divide by the negative 16. And I get x equals negative 2.5. 40 divided by negative 16 is negative 2.5. So now that I have that figured out, I can use that value for x in either equation to solve for the y. And I think I'm going to use it here because then I can just plug it in and find the answer. So I know this is the x value, and then the y value is 6 times the negative 2.5 plus 11. And that is equal to negative 4. Okay, and so on part B, so number 3, part A was 4, negative 3. And part B was negative 2.5 for x, negative 2.5, and then negative 4 for y. And now we'll look at number 4. It says Tyler and Han are trying to solve this system by substitution. Tyler's first step is to isolate x in the first equation, and he gets x equals negative 5 minus 3y. Hans's first step is to isolate 3y in the first equation, and he gets 3y equals negative 5 minus x. Solve both or show that both first steps can be used to solve the system and will yield the same solution. So I think I'll label this as Tyler's method. And do that first. So he's saying x is equal to negative 5 minus 3y. And then he puts that into the second equation for x. Okay? So Tyler is then saying 9 times negative 5 minus 3y plus 3y equals 3. So after you distribute the 9, you get negative 45 minus 27y plus 3y equals 3. And negative, that should say 27. Okay, negative 27y plus 3y is equal to negative 24y. So negative 45 minus 24y equals 3. Now add the 45 to both sides, right? Because we're trying to keep that equation equal. And we get negative 24y equals 48. And so divide by negative 24, and you get y equals negative 2. And so if y is equal to negative 2, then x plus 3 times negative 2 equals negative 5. So that's x plus 6, plus negative 6, so x minus 6 equals negative 5. So then add the 6, and you get x equals 1. Okay, so that's the solution using Tyler's method. So now I'll kind of make a little border and change colors back to blue so we can look at Hans's method. Okay, so Hans used a different equation or a different method, a different strategy. He says 3y is equal to negative 5 minus x. Again, that comes from this equation. And then you can put this, substitute that in for the 3y. So then you would have the equation. This is for Hans. So his first step looks like this. 9x, instead of plus 3y, it's plus negative 5 minus x equals 3. And since this is just a plus sign right here, we can actually clean that up a little bit. Looks like this. And then combine 9x minus x is 8x. So this is 8x minus 5 equals 3. Add the 5. Remember, we're keeping it balanced. we get 8x equals 8. So divide by the 8, and x equals 1, which we got on the first one. And then finally, if x equals 1, I can put a 1 into the first equation for x. I'm going to do it up here. So 1 plus 3y equals negative 5. And I would just, again, we're going to keep things balanced and solve for y. Subtract the 1, subtract the 1. 3y equals negative 6. And when you divide by the 3, you do get y equals negative 2. So x equals 1, y equals negative 2. Also, what we got on the first one. So either method works, and both methods involve substitution, just a different strategy for each one. Okay, we skipped number 5, and then you're doing number 6. It says, Chiron buys supplies for the school's greenhouse. He buys F bags of fertilizer and P packages of soil. He pays $5 for each bag of fertilizer and $2 for each package of soil and spends a total of $90. The equation 5F plus 2P equals 90 describes this relationship. If Chiron solves the equation for P, which equation would result? So he starts with 5F plus 2P equals 90. And if he's going to solve it for P, need to start by subtracting the 5F. Okay. So 2P equals 90 minus 5F. And the next step then is to divide by the 2. And remember, when you divide by 2 on the right side, you're dividing the 90 by 2, which is 45, and then minus the 5F divided by 2 is 2.5F. So it looks like that is answer choice C. And the last problem you had to do was number 7. Number 7 says Elena wanted to find the slope and y-intercept of the graph of 25x minus 20y equals 100. She decided to put the equation in slope-intercept form first. Here is her work. She concluded that the slope is negative 5/4 and the y-intercept is 0.5. What was Elena's mistake? Okay, well, let's take a look at it. So I can see it right away. So here's what happened. She did the first part correctly. So she wrote down the equation. And then she's solving for the y, so she subtracts the 25x from both sides. And when you do that, because it was minus 20y to begin with, that means that the 20y, when it comes down, it's negative 20y. And it looks like she didn't put a negative in front right there. So that equals 100 minus 25x. And then when you divide, you're dividing by negative 20. Okay, so then y equals, and again, she did divide both terms by 20. She just forgot that it was negative. So 100 divided by negative 20 is equal to negative 5. And then it's minus 25x and divided by negative 20. So that's going to be plus right here. And 25 over 20 does reduce to that 5/4, so plus 5/4 x. Okay, so it should be, again, y equals -5 plus 5/4 x. And so then what was Elena's mistake on the second line? She needed a negative in front of the 20y. Okay, so that was the mistake. She needed a negative there. What are the slope and y-intercept? Okay, well, now that it's actually in slope-intercept form above, I can tell what the slope is. The slope is equal to the 5/4, because that is the rate of how the function is changing depending on the x. So the slope is always connected to the x with multiplication. And then the y-intercept is when x is 0, and then y would be -5. Okay, so she just had the signs wrong. And that is the end of your assignment.